Radical expressions, rationalizing the denominator. A radical is in its simplest form when three criteria are met. First of all possible factors have to be removed from the radical. Second, the index of the radical has to be reduced. And last, all fractions have to have radical-free denominators. That means that this fraction right here is not in its simplest form because we have a radical in the denominator. The way we're going to get rid of this radical is we can multiply our fraction by this particular radical over itself. For example, we're going to do square root of x over square root of x. When we do this, we can multiply out our fractions. So 2 times square root of x is going to be 2 square root of x over square root of x times square root of x is equal to square root of x squared, which is the same as saying 2 square root of x over just x, because the square root of x squared is just an x. Now this would be in its simplest form, and that's how we rationalize the denominator. The way we do it, if it was, let's say, 2 over the cube root of x, well, now we can't multiply this by a cube root of x over cube root of x, because what we end up getting in the denominator is cube root of x squared, and that's not what we want. Instead, what we can do is we can multiply our fraction by the square root or the cube root of x squared. So let's multiply this out. 2 times the cube root of x squared is going to be 2 cube root x squared over cube root of x multiplied by cube root of x squared is going to be cube root of x times x squared is x cubed. And of course, this becomes 2 cube root x squared over x. And this is now in the simplest form. And this works when we have any large index. So let's again go with 2 over 9 radical x cubed. So the way we can do this is we're going to multiply by radical 9. X cubed times what is going to give you an x to the 9th? X to the 6th power times x cubed is going to give you an x to the 9. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply it by x to the 6th over the 9 radical, x to the 6th. Now we multiply 2 times the 9 root x to the 6th, and 9 root x to the x cubed times 9 root x to the 6th. X, this is going to give you still a 9 root. X to the 3rd multiplied by x to the 6th is going to be x to the 9th. And then this just becomes 2 9 root x to the 6th over x. And that is our simplest form. All right, let's do this first example right here. 1 over square root of 3. All we're going to do is we're going to multiply by the square root of 3 over the square root of 3. And this is going to give you 1 times square root of 3 is going to be square root of 3 on top. On bottom, we got square root of 3 times square root of 3 is going to be square root of 3 squared, which is going to be square root of 3 over 3. And that's our final answer. Here we have 1 over cube root of a. We're going to multiply this by the cube root of a times what would give you a multiple of 3. Well, a times a squared is going to give you a to the 3rd. So let's do a squared over cube root of a squared. Now this is going to give you 1 times the cube root of a squared is going to give you cube root of a squared over cube root of a multiplied by cube root of a squared is going to give you cube root of a to the 3rd. This is going to become cube root of a squared over a. And there you go, your simplest form. Square root of 3 over 2. That's the same as saying square root of 3 over square root of 2. So I'm going to multiply it by the square root of 2. Multiply by square root of 2 over the square root of 2. And we're going to be left with square root of 3 times the square root of 2 is going to give you square root of 6. 3 times 2 is 6. Square root of 2 times square root of 2 is going to give you 2 squared. Obviously, this becomes square root of 6 over 2. Now we have the fifth root of x over y squared. This one seems a little more challenging, but it's the same thing. We're going to split up the radical, and we're going to rewrite the radical on top and on the bottom. So the fifth root of x over the fifth root of y squared. And all we want to do is we want to get rid of this bottom radical. The way we're going to do this is by, what do you have to multiply y squared to get y to the fifth? You got to multiply by y to the third. So it's going to be fifth root of y to the third over fifth root of y to the third. And that's going to give you the fifth root of x times y to the third over y, well, the fifth root of y to the fifth, because y squared times y to the third is going to give you y to the fifth, and that's going to give you 5 root x times y to the third over y. Fifth root of y to the fifth is just y. And this is going to be your final answer.